day. I'm Roy Epstein, Chair of the Belmont Select Board. I appreciate this opportunity to discuss the upcoming override that's on the April 2nd ballot. It's something that I've supported publicly. The Select Board put it on the ballot. It's very important, I believe, for Belmont to pass this override, and I'm here to explain my reasons for doing so. So first, Belmont, as many have heard, has what's called a structural deficit, which is a situation where our expenses, principally payroll, tend to increase faster than our revenues, which are limited by Prop 2.5. The last override, so periodically an override will be necessary in order for our revenues to meet our expenses. By state law, the town cannot run a deficit. We last had an override 9 years ago in 2015. It's actually extraordinarily good that we've been able to hold off the need for another override for 9 years, but that time has really come. The amount of the override is actually not that hard to figure out. We have a lot of expenses that they're built in. They're from contracts, our labor contracts with the teachers' unions, the police, public safety, clerical, and some expenses that are essential year to year, such as road maintenance, sidewalks, pensions, health insurance. It's pretty straightforward to add that up. And if you do, there's a shortfall for next year, fiscal 25, between our revenues and those expenses. So just to keep going the way we've been doing, to have the services next year that we have this year, actually requires an override of about $7.4 million. But the Select Board, after a lot of discussion with the Warrant Committee and other groups in town, decided that something more was actually advisable, because with a slightly larger override, it frees up resources, or it makes available resources for two important things. One, it gives us more money to address what's become a critical situation with our sidewalks. Many sidewalks are actually unsafe to walk on, principally because tree roots have pushed them all out of shape. They need to be fixed. Secondly, one of the principal reasons that costs are going up for the school department are special ed expenses. We call them out-of-district placement. When a student with special needs has to be placed in a facility outside the school district, that becomes extremely expensive. And the override will begin to allow us to implement a strategy to keep more of those students in the district. We save money in staff, and we save a lot of money on transportation because it costs a lot of money to move these students around every day. That only becomes possible if we have an override for something more than the $7.4 million, and that's why the Select Board recommended $8.4 million, because that will be a source of significant advantages. In planning out the size of the override, we have to take account of some unusual expenses and also possible sources of revenue that can minimize the override. First, on the expense side, the Chenery School boilers are 25 years old. They actually need to be replaced. That's going to cost $1.5 million. We need to do that, because if the boilers fail, as they are wont to do in the middle of a winter, you'd have to close the school. So out of prudence, we're going to reserve $1.5 million for that. Secondly, the town has a cash account called free cash, which is essentially a savings account. For various reasons, that savings account is larger than it absolutely has to be. So our plan is to draw down what we call excess free cash to the minimum over a 3-year period. But that excess gives us something to work with. Third, we've made some assumptions about how various revenues will accrue to the town over 3 years. We think we're right, but we have to protect ourselves in case we're wrong. If there's a revenue shortfall, we have a special account called the General Stabilization Fund that currently has several $1 million in it. that was created actually from the past override. Our plan is not to use general stabilization for the next 3 years, but to keep it in reserve in case there are unexpected expenses or revenue shortfalls that would need to be covered by general stab. And those are the three overarching strategic factors. Another element in achieving long-run financial stability for the town is to increase our commercial tax base and also to decrease unnecessary tax breaks in Belmont is the Belmont Country Club. Let me explain. A long time ago, Belmont had a smaller population and a good amount of commercial activity like greenhouses. Over time, those businesses have gone away. They've been replaced by housing to the point where now Belmont has only about a 5% commercial tax base, which means that the property tax is going to be paid today by houses. There's a lot of focus now on finding ways to increase the commercial tax base by making Belmont more attractive for restaurants, for hotels, potentially increasing office space, commercial properties that could pay a share of property tax and relieve the burden on individual households. Secondly, we've just approved language to go to the legislature to try to undo a tax break that frankly is available only to the Belmont Country Club. Their taxes are 75% below what they would be if it was not a country club. And the Select Board has decided to ask legislative approval to eliminate that tax break. The single largest type of expense in Belmont is salaries and compensation. Between the schools and on the town side, the teachers, admin staff, all of our town employees, public safety unions, clericals, and so forth, salary expense is about 75% of our total budget. So managing union contracts is really critical for future financial stability. We just concluded a contract with the police dispatchers that I think was done very well. The biggest single contract that's going to come up in the next year is the school contract. That's why, in my view, it's critical to have experienced, fair, but tough negotiators on the school committee, because it's the school committee with the responsibility of negotiating the teacher contract, not the Select Board. There's another consideration about the override which has always been high in my mind but has not been discussed very much in town. And that is viewing your home or even your investment property as one of the largest investments that you have. The override will increase the property tax on a home from somewhere from $1,000 to maybe $1,700 for most houses. That's clearly a significant expense. But what are you getting in return? You are preserving the value of a house that is well worth it, and it's money well spent to preserve that value. For example, I compared Garfield Street in Watertown to Hillcrest Road in Belmont. Those streets are very similar. Parcels are similar, the housing stock is very similar, but the houses on Hillcrest Road are worth $1 million on average more than Garfield Street in Watertown. The main difference is because of the quality of our schools and the quality of our other services. Look at condos or two families. Take comparable streets in Watertown and Belmont. The Belmont properties for a two-family are worth about $200,000 more than Watertown. It's because we have excellent schools and excellent services. By preserving those services, you preserve the value of your house, and I would say it's money well spent and a good decision. So Election Day is April 2nd. You have a lot to think about, but I think the choice for the override, question 1, is very clear. Voting yes is good for the town. It's good for the schools, but it's also good for you, the property owner. it would preserve Belmont and preserve all the things in Belmont that we value, it would be the right decision. I'm Roy Epstein, Chair of the Select Board. Thank you very much.